My name is Nick and welcome to my channel where I like to talk about scary stuff. Just Before Dawn is an 80s wilderness survival slasher about a group of friends on a camping trip in beautiful Oregon until things turn ugly when they find themselves hunted by an inbred monstrous mountain man. Yes, everyone, I am here trying to bring Shudder-day back to this channel. It isn't every Saturday that I do this, but when I do, I like to talk about my favorite streaming service, Shudder, to find a solid recommendation for you guys. And Just Before Dawn is a perfect example of one of those hidden gems that I love that happens to pop up on the service, so you know you gotta check it out while it's available. And I have to give the disclaimer that I am an 80s slasher nut, so if you are not into 80s slashers, probably not going to be a big deal of a movie for you. But if you are into them, this is a must watch. And I love it so much that I got to talk about this movie with spoilers. If we're going to do this review, let's do this review. So if you have not already seen Just Before Dawn, head over to Shudder, watch it, come back, finish the video. It's gonna be a good time. Just Before Dawn checks off all the boxes for me. It was actually shot in Oregon, so that serves as a beautiful backdrop for the scares and kills. The characters are well-rounded enough. I mean, not like you're gonna remember their names, but you don't just want to see them slaughtered, which is slashers speak for good character development. And while the idea of like an inbred mountain man sounds pretty basic, this movie has two inbred mountain men with machetes. You can't argue with that. Let's just run through this entire damn movie and talk about everything that I love, because that's what I'm here to do. The movie begins with a standout shot of a woodsy sunrise as the opening credits play. And this movie has this creepy whistling theme that sets the dreary atmosphere for the events to follow. Never underestimate the power of a theme song. Our cold open features a pair of hunters out in the woods, drinking in the early morning hours, as you do in an 80s slasher film, when they come across this abandoned church in the middle of nowhere. And this is where we get a solid scare when one of the killers is revealed creeping from the roof. And I really enjoy this because this is not like the jump scares of today. We don't have the loud bang. We just sort of see the visual and we sort of let it creep in. I love it because it really gets under your skin, and I mean, this movie is creepy to me. Our main man Ty runs out of the church as he notices their truck is careening down a hill, leaving the nephew inside walking around to stumble into a killer who slices and dices him with a serrated machete straight through the crotch. I mean, this is brutal stuff. Next, we're introduced to our main group of characters, including obvious final girl Constance, her boyfriend Warren, played by Greg Henry, who has inherited a plot of land on a state park, which doesn't make any sense, but I think it's fake anyway, so it doesn't matter. Then there's Jonathan, who is, I guess, just like the other guy. Megan is his girlfriend. She's the fun party girl. And then we have Jonathan's brother Daniel, who is the nerd who's into photography. The group heads into the woods in an RV, which is a solid upgrade from the typical Scooby-Doo van, and they're even listening to a real song. You've got a banger on the radio with Heart of Glass by Blondie. I mean, this movie is legit. While the characters are fun, I do have to call out the fact that they fall into typical 80s slasher character trappings and that they're too dumb for their own good. But we really wouldn't have a movie if they weren't. So, I mean, when I go into these movies, I expect characters to be stupid, so it doesn't surprise me that they ignore the warnings of not one, but two harbingers of death. Ty from the cold open runs out on the road being all, don't go into the woods, and they're all, we just drove like 7 hours to party, so fuck off. Then they bump into the forest ranger who is like, hey, let me know where you're camping so I know where to find the bodies. And they're like, oh, you old kook, you forest ranger, you kill me. And he's like, no, really, you're gonna get killed. They park the RV and hike right into Murderville, and how could they not when they have such beautiful waterfalls to see? They camp right next to a waterfall, and I mean, how could you not? It's so beautiful. This movie, I have to say, for being as dreary and eerie as it is also beautiful. Like, I love the cinematography in this movie, even just the framing. It's so good. And I like that this movie takes its time. We don't immediately head into the bloodbath, This movie takes place over the course of a good 3 days as we sort of build tension and let that eeriness fester until it just explodes. The characters go on a hike and come across a rope bridge that I can't imagine crossing without being paid at least 10 grand up front, but remember this because it's going to be important later. Like I said, they're camping near a waterfall, so how could we not get a skinny dipping scene? Megan and Jonathan are getting wet and wild in the water when we see in the background one of the mountain men behind the waterfall creeping on them. And this is one of my favorite shots in any 80s slasher because it encapsulates the subgenre so perfectly. Megan begins trying to drown her own boyfriend because characters in these movies are programmed like robots from hell, but then she starts to feel these hands on her and she's like, oh my god, Jonathan, until she looks up and sees Jonathan walking to the shore as there are still hands on her from under the water. Oh my god, it's so creepy. It's so creepy. Oh my god, like, we've seen in a lot of movies, especially back in 80s horror, where you would have a killer sort of creeping on this topless woman, and it's just like sleazy and gross, but this movie, this scene right here really captures, I feel like, that violation and that scariness, and it's chilling. For some reason, they don't get the actual fuck out of there and instead decide to have a dance party with wine like a bunch of damn Hufflepuffs. And this is when we get some creepy woodland folk coming out of nowhere to tell them to stop their partying and get the hell out of the woods. And oh yeah, I forgot to say, earlier on, at like the beginning of the day, the second day they're there, they see this young girl, this woodland girl, singing, and then she runs away from them. Well, she's now here with her mother and father, and they're like, get off our land, you know, whatever, being crazy inbred people, because I'll just tell you right now, this is the family of the killers. And honestly, in a way, they're kind of trying to warn them, like, hey, get out of here, otherwise, you know, our sons are gonna kill ya, but also they're real assholes about it. So I like the fact that the group stands up to them and is basically just like, shoot, get the fuck out of our land, bitch. The next morning, Megan's makeup has been stolen, which is an absolute tragedy. So she sends Jonathan into the woods to find it, which sounds like the dumbest mission on earth, but we gotta get to the kills, so I get it. Jonathan ends up finding that woodland girl, Mary Cat, still the funniest name I think I've ever heard, and she has the makeup smeared all over her face in ridiculous fashion, but Jonathan ends up chasing her through the woods as she lures him to the rope bridge, and once he gets on there and crosses, wouldn't you believe it, boom, killer, he's there, he slices that rope bridge, and Jonathan falls into the river. But this isn't the end for Jonathan, no, because he's still holding onto the rope, and he has a whistle, he's even whistling for help. Constance even hears him and is like, whatever, no big deal, and it's kind of tragic for him, actually, as he climbs up this rope to get to the top of this cliff. And then the killer just kicks him right back down and he drowns. While the kills in this movie are pretty weak and mostly off screen, I still find them impactful because these characters don't entirely suck. So Megan and Daniel are wandering around the woods like a pair of idiots when they end up at the abandoned church from the beginning of the movie, and they're doing this little photo shoot. And then there's this very like Velma from Scooby-Doo moment where Daniel's glasses are off and he can't fully see the killer coming at him and he gets stabbed in the gut. Well, you know what? That's what happens when you take your damn glasses off, Daniel. That's what you get. Megan runs into the church to hide, and this is when it is revealed to the audience and the characters in the movie that there are two killers. Not just the one outside, but there is one inside, and he kills Megan off screen while the other one takes pictures through the window with Daniel's camera. It's a little silly, but also a little creepy. With most of our cast down, we're left with the blonde couple, Constance and Warren, and another great scare as they're fishing in the river when Jonathan's body comes over a small waterfall at them. After this, you'd think they'd finally just get the hell out of here, but no, they waste their time at the campsite for a while as the movie spins its wheels. Warren believes they should wait and or try and find Megan and Daniel, while Constance is like, we need to go, we're all gonna die. Meanwhile, we've got the forest ranger wandering around because he's just been waiting for the bodies to drop, and he talks to that woodland family in their little shack of a home, and this is where it becomes clear to us that this is the family that the killers have come from. But anyway, I want to talk about Constance. I want to take a break to kind of talk about Constance as a whole because she is one of my favorite underrated final girls, and there's a lot to say about her. And I really want to know what you guys think of her, especially if you've seen the movie. But there's a really interesting arc for her character. At the very beginning, Constance is the survivalist, experienced camper. She's kind of guiding the group in a way as they're heading into the woods. But she also appears to be a little uptight. Like, just a little uptight. Like, there's this scene the first night they're camping when Jonathan and Warren try to scare the rest of the group and they're making noises in the bushes, and it's just like, oh my god, this is like, who do people really prank each other like this? Like, this is so stupid. We see these in all these 80s slashers where, you know, you have a character going like, don't play a trick on me, it's not funny, Johnny. And it's sort of like, well, who does this, honestly? But this prank happens to play into the plot in a way that I really enjoy, because Megan is scared, so she grabs a knife to defend herself. And Constance freezes in this moment. Not a final girl move. And the next day, she's really thinking about it, and she's like, I am the one that is supposed to be, like, on paper, the one who rises to the occasion. Yet when that occasion hit, I didn't know what to do. And I just found that to be so interesting because she's really trying to sort of like become the best version of her. She's really trying to like reach her potential. And I find that so interesting for, you know, so often we see a final girl just kind of like thrown into the situation and then they happen to, you know, work their way out of it. And that's great. Here, throughout the entire movie, Constance is actively trying to become that person. And I find it very compelling. The problem with this, we'll talk about the problematic nature of her arc, is that in very 1981 fashion, it is shown to us through Constance's wardrobe change and the way she literally takes her hair down. Like she puts her hair down, she puts on makeup, she wears short shorts and a shirt that is tied up around her boobs, and it's just like, that's generally not how women try to reach their full potential. Like, it's silly and it's dated, and I can see anyone looking at that and going, this is just stupid. But I think that aside, the actual arc that the character goes through, I find so interesting because she has that moment where she's like, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And I want to make sure that if that moment ever happens again, that I am going to do what needs to be done. And I find this so interesting because, okay, so we get to the end, right? So now we're towards the end of the movie. There's this whole deal where Warren has to go find Jonathan's body to get the RV keys, and because it's like, why didn't you grab them before, whatever, anyway. So Constance is alone at the campfire, and wouldn't you know it, one of the killers creeps up on her and attacks. And this is so good because, okay, so she runs away, she climbs a tree to get away from his ass, and even more badass than that, the dude chops the whole tree down to get her. It is so good, but this is still where Constance really, she's just scared. She really isn't fully there. And what ends up happening is the forest ranger comes up and he shoots the man dead. And Constance is saved, and, you know, she's still like, shit, like, I didn't do, you know, I didn't fully take care of business when I was supposed to take care of business. So they think with that guy dead, everything's fine, right? And the forest ranger is like, I'll go get help or whatever. You two just stay by the fire. And so they chill at their campsite until, again, they get attacked by the other killer. And this is what I like. Well, one, let me just say that Warren is completely useless. He just gets, like, slashed, and then he falls to the ground. As Constance takes on this burly-ass mountain man who is trying to, like, bear hug her to death, and she keeps fighting. And I just found this so good because you have these two killers, and they pretty much, it seems like there's two simply for Constance's arc, and that she once again has a moment where she needs to fight back, and she doesn't. She just runs, you know? It's like this whole movie is about her flight or fight response. And when the first killer attacks, she runs. But when that second killer shows up, she's like, fuck no, it's time to fight. And she does one of the most badass things I have seen any final girl do. And it isn't filmed particularly well because, of course, this is a low-budget movie, but if you just use a little imagination, it's real badass. Because Constance, straight up, she reaches her hand into the damn killer's mouth and stuffs it down his throat to suffocate his ass. And it's just like, boom, nope, you're dead. And I'm just like, damn, like, I've never seen that before. The movie basically ends there as the sun rises and we hear the creepy whistling again. And I mean, again, it's very simple. It's bare bones 80s slasher. But I love Constance. I mean, I also love the cinematography. I do enjoy the other characters. I actually like the killers for as basic as they are. But I really appreciate that Constance has a real arc and just like a human arc. Like, you could have that same exact character work, put into a male character, any character, doesn't matter. It's just plain compelling. And I think for a movie that's now 40 years old, like, I have to give it credit for that. Just Before Dawn might seem like any generic camping slasher film, but I think this movie brings enough to the table to make it worth at least one watch. If it isn't your cup of tea, I understand, but this is a forever favorite for me. For the concept, I'm gonna give Just Before Dawn a 3 out of 5, because yes, it is simple as all hell, but I think there's enough material injected into the formula to put it above the standard slasher fare. For the execution, I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 because I really gotta hand it to the entire filmmaking team for making a movie that really sort of set itself apart from the other slasher movies of its time and, in my opinion, holds up today. And for the entertainment value, I'm also gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 because I just love a good slasher movie, and this one, again, checks off all the boxes for me. It's got Oregon, it's got Constance, it's got the cinematography, it's got the whistling, like, I love it. As for my personal grade, I'm gonna give Just Before Dawn a 3.5 out of 5. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It might be simple, but I think there's just enough there to make it a memorable favorite for me personally. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, especially if you made it to the end. For any regular viewers, I feel like I could make a whole video on this alone just to apologize for basically skipping October. I didn't plan on it. It's not how I wanted things to go. There was a lot I planned on doing, and it was just a very rough month. But I really want to thank you guys for sticking with me and continuing to support this channel. I really do appreciate it, and I'm gonna try to get Shudder-day back up and running and be a regular staple of this channel. I love to hop on Shudder and just like find a fun movie that I want to talk about. Like, that's my favorite thing, and I love to know what you guys think. So for the month of November, let's hope I can get 3 whole videos out at this point this month. But for the month of November, I want to look at family horror films on Shudder. So this first one, Just Before Dawn, we got Crazy Killer Twins. I love it. Of course, let me know what you want to see covered here on the channel. I am very backlogged right now. There are movies from the last 2 months that I still want to talk about. So if you are looking to see reviews from me on Last Night in Soho, Antlers, Halloween Kills, I know we're way past Halloween, but you know what? I really like to take the time to really see these movies twice if I can, really put some time into it. So I don't want to just throw out a video as soon as the movie is released to just to be there to talk about it. I want to make a video worth posting. You know what I mean? You guys know what I mean. I know you're great. I know you're great. If you're not already, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Letterboxd for more movie recommendations. That's it for this video, but I won't stop you from watching another.